The death of the US ambassador to Libya marks a dangerous potential tipping point for the Arab uprisings. The mobs, which gathered last night outside the US consulate in Benghazi and the embassy in Cairo, claimed to be angered by a video made by some American man they'd never heard of and which none of them had actually seen. Many Americans will wake this morning wondering whether their support for the overthrows of Messrs Gaddafi and Mubarak was really worth it. As an aside, one can imagine Bashar al-Assad is in rather a good mood today. The slim chances of US intervention in Syria now seem even more remote. In a way, we've been here before, of course, but the Danish cartoons never created such a potentially explosive diplomatic dilemma. Mitt Romney has already criticised the Obama administration's initial response, and what Obama does next will be watched with interest around the world. Joining us now on the line is Algerian journalist Nabila Ramdani. Nabila, welcome to the briefing. In a way, should we just expect that these sorts of things do happen in this part of the world, and there's nothing much anyone can really do about it?
Well, I certainly believe that the Western countries didn't expect that kind of dramatic incidents and indeed deeply shocking development to happen. It is one which will be sending alarm, all over the world and especially in the West. And the narrative since the start of the Arab Spring Revolution has been that of friendly rebels. Wherever a revolution took place, preparing to introduce democracy across the Middle East and North Africa. And of course, the murder of the US ambassador to Libya and 3 embassy staff doesn't fit in with this narrative at all.
No, it certainly doesn't. When we're looking at what's happening in the US, obviously, people are waking up there now, and we'll see what political fallout there is later in the day. But already, you've seen Republicans, people on the right, trying to use this as a stick to beat Obama. Obama had gone to Cairo, made a big speech about America's role in the Muslim world. He sort of supported most of the Arab uprisings. Where do you think his support for the Arab uprisings lies now following these attacks?
Well, it will certainly bring a strain to the relationship between the US and indeed Libya, but also, and as you rightly said, the Arab world in general. It's going to be politically extremely difficult for the Obama administration, and there will be calls for some sort of action in the face of a murder. And we are very close to a presidential election as well. But I think it says a lot about the state of those post-revolution countries, about, in Libya in particular, the power vacuum, the powerlessness of the transitional government, the National Transitional Council, which admitted to its lack of authority overall in the country. And it says a lot about the lack of security and indeed the volatile nature of those countries. And more crucially, I think, it says a lot about a group of Islamists who are trying to exploit this power vacuum for political gain. And we've seen the rise of Islamism in countries like Tunisia, Egypt, and indeed Libya. Libya is, of course, more worrying because of the nature of the attack, which was military.
I want to come back to Libya in a moment, but I just want to talk to you briefly about Egypt as well, because obviously these protests started in Cairo last night, and we touched on it a little bit last night on the Monocle Daily. But it's striking that given what it's already the afternoon in Cairo. Mohamed Morsi hasn't said a word yet about what's happened there. In Libya, we understand that the president's at least expressed his regret to Hillary Clinton, to the State Department. Are you surprised that Mohamed Morsi hasn't tried to sort of come out in front of this and at least condemn the actions at the embassy?
Yes, indeed, it is quite noticeable in a negative manner, if you want, that the new president of Egypt hasn't condemned, any form of violence, which should, have been his role, really. But I think what it says about Egyptian society and indeed the Arab world, but, that there is still resentment toward American role in the Arab world, in Egypt in particular, and the Muslim Brotherhood, let's not forget, was targeted by the former regime of Hosni Mubarak in partnership with the USA, and the Muslim Brotherhood in particular was a political group which suffered massively, which was repressed, driven underground, and its members were arrested, tortured, and often forced to exile because of their political views. So for the Muslim Brotherhood, I think there's still a lot of resentment towards American role in Egypt in particular.
And do you think that in both Egypt and in Libya, and God forbid if this spreads to other countries, which is certainly possible, that for certainly the Islamist groups, Marda or otherwise, like the Muslim Brotherhood, in a way it's better for them to be associated with, even with extremists who might attack embassies, rather than associate themselves with the Americans?
Well, I think, what this incident says is, it says a lot about the rise of extremist political groups which are trying to gain a political capital out of the volatility of all these countries. But it also, dare I say, brings into sharp focus the pragmatism of everybody involved. Remember that the US was quite prepared to do business with Gaddafi, and indeed had become very friendly with him in the years just before his murder, just as they were quite pragmatic in their relationship with the dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak. Britain was indeed the same. Libya was being opened up to energy speculators in Libya, and British and American businesses were piling into cities like Tripoli and Benghazi, and the very fact that the use of mainly British and French jets to facilitate the revolution against Gaddafi was clearly carried out with huge American support, and this shows the absolute pragmatism of the West in its dealing with Arab dictators, and I guess the message is that this needs to change.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much for joining us.